I am good at only one thing: business. For the last 30 years, I've built 19 companies and invested in 78 startups. People ask me every day to be their mentor and to help them. And they've even offered me £10,000 to help them just for one day in business. I don't want to charge people for help. I want to give you the knowledge for free. And today, I'm going to give you everything you need to start a business, to grow a business, to maintain a business, and to sell a business. But if you can't stay on this video for 5 minutes without clicking off, I've got some news for you. You're probably not going to make it. I'm now going to list all the things I'm going to go through in the next 45 minutes to change your mindset, give you the tools you need to be successful, and hopefully create new pathways in your brain that give you the chance to be successful. The very thing that the education system does not want you to be is free. Working for yourself, controlling your own destiny. So today we're going to cover how to start a business with no money, how to win and the secret to it all in business, how to lose, important, how to do a mind map, which is much better than a business plan, much more liquid. How to find purpose, very important, to motivate you to get up in the morning, to motivate your team to get up in the morning, and to motivate customers to want to work with you. How to find a co-founder, something that I personally believe is like having a relationship partnership. It can change everything if you have the right co-founder and can give you that accountability that we all need. How to sell, everybody can sell. There's no such thing as people that are good at selling and people that aren't good at selling. They're just people that haven't been taught the system of selling. Everyone can sell, everyone must learn to sell. It is the key to unlocking freedom. How to market your business, how to PR yourself and your business, how to get an investor, and I'll go through many different ways around that subject. You can get an investor. How to get sponsors, often an untapped secret source to making a business grow without needing an investor, so we'll get into that. How to build a company brand, because I honestly think value comes from building a brand, not a business, and we'll go into what a brand is and how to build one. How to build personal brand, which in this day and age, without doubt, is vital. You can't really build a company today without having a personal brand, and I'll get into personal brand on a public stage and personal brand within your industry. How to hire, how to grow, how to build, how to go global, which is easier than it sounds and probably very important so you're not stuck in one market and leaving yourself vulnerable. How to get a mentor, there is a way to do it and nearly nobody does it. And how to avoid big mistakes, but accept luck into your life, make luck happen in your life. And finally, how equity works and how to sell your business. At the end of this video, you will know everything that's taken me 35 years to know. You will be changed if you watch this video, and I promise you at the end of it, it will cost you nothing and you'll never regret it. How to start. Now, most people tell you to start a business when you have an idea. That's not where a business starts. A business starts with a feeling, an instinct that perhaps you need to make a change, and then applying yourself to learning what is the best way to build something that you love. Now, everybody tells me that starting a business is filling a market gap or finding a niche. That is not true. One of my most successful early companies was a company called Fluid. This company turned into one of the biggest agencies in Asia, which I sold to PricewaterhouseCoopers for more money than I'll ever need. And when I launched that company, there was 500 other businesses doing almost exactly the same. So how did I manage to win? I didn't have an original idea like everybody tells you you've got to have to start a business. You don't start with an original idea. You start with what you like doing. Now, I love helping businesses and people succeed. I love marketing. I could spend all day long studying and understanding marketing. Every time someone launches a new business, I want to understand how they made it successful. I'm obsessed. I enjoy it. It's my hobby. There is no work-life balance. There is only syncing up your life with your business. And so I believe the first step in starting a business is following your passions. Now, everybody tells you that that's not the way to start a business because often your passions initially don't necessarily generate revenue. But that's because you haven't applied a business mindset to what you love. So I loved marketing, and I started a creative agency called Fluid that helped people come up with marketing ideas to make their businesses successful. Now, there were many companies doing it, but not many of these people doing it loved it like I did. So I evolved my marketing abilities, pushed the boundaries of what was possible, used new technologies like, at the time, email marketing and direct marketing that no one else was doing because I was obsessed with what is the latest thing. And for you, the way you do it is you've got to write down what you like doing and got to write down what you don't like doing. What you love doing, you've got to get really good at. And what you don't like doing, you've got to outsource and not do it. The school system has taught you the wrong thing, that if you're not good at something, you need to spend more time getting better at it. That is a lie. You've got to spend more time getting good at the thing you love to do. Get obsessed by it. And that's actually where a business idea begins. Because once you have figured out what you love doing, the next step is the idea. Now again, people will tell you that you need to come up with an original idea. That's not true. The second thing is when it comes to an idea, you can actually combine forces with other people. So back to my example, when I launched Fluid, I loved marketing. And I met someone who could take my marketing ideas and turn them into graphic illustrations and brilliant presentations and abilities to help that company in a visual way understand my idea. So I teamed up with her and created a 50-50 business partner, and I'll come on to equity later in the video, that was literally the springboard to one of the most successful companies in Asia in this space. So the key is not coming up with an original idea and trying to do it all on your own. The key is coming up with something you love linked to what you do, and perhaps if there's a gap within your ability to execute on what you love, find a partner. So for example, if you love writing, then write a book. And maybe you need to find a partner that can publish that book, or find a company that will publish that book, or get someone to help you, like an agent, find someone that will publish that book. And that's where it really begins. In the idea phase, it's got to link to your passion. And I'll come on to purpose later, but it's key. You won't be able to follow through and probably won't be successful if you're not willing to do the thing that you're doing more often and all the time compared to other people. So you figured out what you love doing, and now you have an idea. Now, the idea itself can evolve. From my point of view, when I started what I'm doing today, which is a platform to help you for free, the first thing I did was, in fact, a podcast. So the step after idea is step one, execution. And execution involves what is the first thing you can do to make your business idea come to life. And for me, in my example, it was a podcast. But for you, it might be a blog. It might be a LinkedIn post. It might be setting up a social media handle and starting to post up your photography. Whatever the first step execution is, do not make it too hard for yourself. In my case, sitting down, interviewing people I found interesting, recording it and putting it up would serve the purpose of giving people mentorship in a podcast for free, which was my first step in my mission in my recent business. So all I really did was get a microphone, sit down and record conversations. Now, if you go back and look at those very early podcasts, the execution was not brilliant. The guests were good, the execution was not great. I had a rubbish microphone, I had a rubbish camera, and I slowly improved. And step one is come up with a simple execution plan. Step two in starting a business is consider where the revenue is going to come from. Now, some people say you need this within the idea phase. And yes, you can put it within the idea phase, but sometimes revenue doesn't actually make itself clear until you start. So an example, if you're a photographer and you think you're going to make your money charging by the hour for your photography skills, you're probably limiting yourself, right? So you're probably better off initially taking pictures of things you love and putting them up online and seeing if people would buy them, seeing if people would license the pictures, experimenting with revenue models and seeing what sticks. Sure, maybe people will book you by the hour, but why would you start off with a revenue model that limits yourself? So I think when building a business, the thing to really think about is not necessarily revenue, but experimenting with different ways to make money from the thing that you are doing. So again, when I launched Fluid, most companies charge by the hour for their marketing consultancy service. We didn't. We charged by the outcome of what we did. So if we helped a company be successful, sell more product, we took a percentage of those sales. Now, that was not part of most companies' business models, because most people start with an idea and then they do a revenue model and then they start. A famous quote is, everyone's got a plan till they get punched in the face. And the truth is, when you launch a business, you just want to keep yourself nimble, like a boxer. You want to see what is going to be the best punch combination for you to make your business work. And finally, when starting a business, step three is you've got to make sure your purpose is strong. Now, you've made sure that you enjoy what you do, and that's great, because that's going to help you get up in the morning. But actually, I believe new businesses today need to think about what they're going to do to make a difference in the world. How are you going to make sure that people want to work with you? How are you going to make sure that what you're doing isn't just for profit? Because if it's just for profit, everybody that works for you is going to want more money. Everybody that's working with you is going to want to pay you less. But if you have a purpose bigger than yourself, and identify that purpose and install it in your business, I promise you, you won't be managing people anymore. One of the biggest stresses of building a company. You won't have to manage people because you will only have to manage purpose. Now, I'm going to go into more depth how this all works, but a lot of what I've talked about here already has cost you no money. You haven't had to spend any money. Now, even if your idea is to launch an app that costs £1 million to develop, start off with a service business. Start off with a revenue-based model that can get you there. So an example is Airbnb. When they launched, they actually sold cereal boxes at conventions. It was enough to be similar to Airbnb, because some of the first accommodation Airbnb ever sold were at conventions. People go to see Obama speak, go and see different politicians speak at these conventions, and they would rent out rooms on Airbnb later. But initially, they sold cereal boxes, Obama reels, at this event. At these events, to get to know their customers, connect to their customers, have a conversation with their customers and make money. And that is the money they use to initially get the business going. So I will come on to other steps later now in the video about raising money and other ways to do this. But if you do these first few things, your business is up and running, it's cost you no money. And I promise you, because it will have purpose, because you like it, and because there's a revenue model behind it, you will do it, it will happen. So how to win in business. Let's say you've already got a company, you're not winning and you want to win, or you want to know the secret formula to winning. And having built nearly 19 companies, I'm on my 19th business now, how to win in business is actually very simple. Now I mentioned earlier having purpose and you personally being passionate about it, that's definitely going to give you an edge, because most people are not loving what they're doing. So if you are, you're already winning. But there is a secret formula to winning, and that starts with a couple of things. Number one, delayed gratification. Spelt completely wrong. You get what I mean though, right? Delayed gratification is the number one reason that businesses win. You don't rush to charge customers, for example. You let them help you succeed. So the first customer I ever got in my agency, Fluid, I actually did the work for free. Now, a lot of people say don't do the work for free. I don't agree. I built up a relationship with that customer. I over-delivered when it was free. And that meant once they were happy, not only did they use me forever, for the 16 years that I ran that company, they also recommended me to everybody. They felt like they were part of my early journey. Getting your customers on side is another element of winning, but realizing that if you delay getting gratification, you will make more money. And there's so many examples of this. If you look at big businesses, they spent years making no money. And then when they had the system all in place, huge databases, for example, then they can monetize. And people don't wait long enough. The other thing you can do is have a very strict moral code within your business, a culture. Culture will eat strategy for breakfast every single time. You've got to make sure that your culture in the company is client-centric. A good example of this is Amazon. I'm just saying that they do actually focus on their customers as a culture. And I think that a lot of people are too busy, for example, thinking about how they can get money out of their customer and not thinking how they can bring value. And if you want to win, bring value. You want loyalty, bring value. You want them to follow you, promote you, share you on their stories, care about you, talk about you when you're not in the room, then show them some love. It sounds simple, but people don't do it because they're too busy not waiting for the payoff and too busy not installing a culture of patience, a culture of caring about your customer. And then the final thing is luck. Now, luck is not a subjective thing. Luck, I have discovered, is hackable. And you can hack luck 3 ways. First, be persistent. And what I mentioned earlier about purpose and loving what you do will help you be persistent. You have to outlast other people. When I launched my company Fluid in Hong Kong, I had so many competitors, but slowly but surely, they all shut down, went bankrupt. They didn't care like I did. And I think that whole luck thing is about persistence. That's number 1. Number 2 in hacking luck is know your destination. What is success for you? What will make you happy? What do you want? Big company, small company? And by the way, a big company is much easier to run than a small company. Aim for a big company is my recommendation. But that's my opinion. It might not work for you. So I suggest you define success for yourself. Today, success for me is having the time to take my son to school and be able to pick him up. It's having time to do the exercise I want to do. That's how I define success. So I never sell hours. And we'll come to that in a little bit, why you should never sell hours. But luck is hackable. You have to be persistent. You have to know your destination. And finally, you have to learn to take risk. Be careful with sayings out there trying to trick you into options that are not true. So the worst one is the harder you work, the luckier you get. That is not true. That is a lie designed to make you work hard. If it was true, every nurse in this country would be a millionaire. It is not true that working hard equals success. What equals success is taking risk. You have to learn to take risk. Lean into fear. Learn to love fear, embrace it, and then you can take more risk. And the more risk you take, the luckier you get. Learn to build culture into your businesses about the long term and learn to hack luck. You will win. The secret to it all is learning to accept that you could lose everything and it doesn't matter. You've got to be willing to risk it all. Take a chance and go for it. Do not rush. Do not see this as anything but a marathon. It's not a sprint. Enjoy the journey, don't rush, no one can beat you if you do it. So delayed gratification is key. Brands like Facebook and Instagram, although I'm not a fan necessarily of these platforms, they personify this concept. They did build massive user bases, but they didn't monetize them at the beginning. They waited, they just kept building value in their platforms for the users, and more people kept signing up. And they didn't actually monetize for a very long time. I think Facebook was nearly 10 years before it started making money. And although I'm not suggesting you wait 10 years and those companies have different investment structures, which we'll talk about a bit later, it is important to understand how important this is to building a successful long-term business. Do not think about making money straight up. Build a brand, not a business. And those businesses like Facebook and Instagram, they waited a decade before they started monetizing. And as soon as they started monetizing, Facebook in particular, it started to decline as a brand. Less people liked it. Too many ads on the screen, too many annoying buttons that didn't have any relevance to them because they were suddenly trying to make their client happy, the advertiser, and no longer focused on the user in the same way. So be careful. But that is how you build massive economic moats. People like Google, similar. At the beginning, no revenue. YouTube, at the beginning, no revenue. Focus on building something that has value for people. Delayed gratification is one of the secret weapons in building a sustainable, large, and successful business that you love. Next up, how to lose. It might sound like a strange title, but it's the number one thing I've noticed that people don't learn to do that doesn't allow them to be successful. This all stems back probably to school, where you were told that success was getting an A. It's not. Success is actually accepting failure, learning to bounce back from failure, embracing failure, having learnings from the businesses that I have been involved in that have failed, have allowed me to be successful. I guarantee you, if I hadn't lost £1 million on doing comic book business, I wouldn't be rich or successful today. I needed to learn how to fail. I needed to accept losing. It's key. And so how do you build the stamina and the ability to lose? The first thing you realize, number one, don't let things own you. If you let things own you, you are controlled by the very thing that's meant to bring you pleasure. You have to learn to lose those things and not care about those things. The second thing, to lose, you need to let your short-term ego go. Now, ego is actually a very powerful motivator, and there are different types of ego. The ego I'm talking about here is driving around in the right car to give an image to people that don't care about you that you are successful. Do not worry about this. Learn to enjoy looking like you're a loser. Let people underestimate you. It is so powerful to be underestimated by your competition, even by your customers, because if they think you can't deliver and you do, then brilliant. Do not worry about losing. Learn to be a D student. Love to fail. That's why 80% of A students end up working for D students, because A students are scared to lose. They don't want to lose. They always want to get an A. They always want to be seen as the smartest person in the room. Don't worry about it. Learn to lose. Learn to embrace getting a D. And getting a D in business means take your time. Don't let someone else decide whether or not you're success or not. Do not let anybody else tell you how to do things. And ironically, power up your ego in a different way, an internal ego that tells you you're not a loser. You know where you're going. No matter what people judge you based on the car that you're driving or where you're living or what you do with your day, don't let them decide that you're a loser. Let them think whatever they want. Learn to love losing. Learn to embrace failure. I promise you, if you think that the worst is if you try something and you lose everything, it doesn't matter, you can go again, you will succeed. I guarantee it. Next up, I want to teach you something practical. How to do a mind map. So many people teach you in business to do a business plan. Forget that shit. There is no use for a business plan. What you want to do is map out where your business could go, how it could go, and understand the different directions in which to take your business. And I'm going to go through how to do a mind map next. Now, I have never seen anyone teach anybody how to do a mind map. And the reason I think that no one teaches this is because there's no template to sell you. There's no product to sell you around. A business plan has a million ways to make money out of you. And none of it works. These business plan things actually kill companies. I've seen people write up massive business plans, stick to it, and die. A mind map, however, will cost you nothing to do and actually leaves you nimble and free to explore where the business can go. And it's so simple. It starts in the middle with your hobby. Whatever that is, what you love to do. Second part of a mind map is the business. I can't spell, but don't judge me for that. Luckily, I know I'm doing a business. What is the business? So what is your hobby? What do you love to do? And ideally, it now links to the business. Now, with the business, and I'm going to use my company as an example, hopefully it translates into what maybe your idea is. But in my business, which is what we call Free Humanity, the name probably gives it away, what we want to do. We want people to be free, to do what they love. So within Free Humanity, this is what I did when I first started the business 4 years ago. I looked at different ways that I can make the business work. So off here, I wrote podcast. Right? Actually, as I mentioned earlier, this is one of the first things I actually did. So from a podcast, what comes off it? Well, I build a network. right? I'm now doing a mind map of something I actually have already done to illustrate how a mind map works when you're building out a business of value. So one of the benefits of doing a podcast was a network. In my case, I managed to interview over 200 of the world's most successful entrepreneurs, which are now part of my life and help me with what I'm doing, help you on helpbank.com. That was one of my ambitions, and it was on my mind map network. The second thing was brands. I realized if I did a podcast, I could probably make revenue from brands. Now, with a mind map, you can get bigger and bigger and bigger with mind maps. There's no stopping how big a mind map can get. Just like your brain is infinite in its ability to think, a mind map is also infinite. And when I wrote the original mind map out for my business, I thought brands, and then I started listing them. So in my case, GoDaddy, Tide Banking, Adobe. These were brands that I felt were a fit with what I wanted to do. Give people the ability to start their own business, be free, do what they love. So I listed out all the brands that I could work with. I also listed in my original mind map, and I didn't do it at the beginning, but it ended up becoming part of what I did, was an app. And an app that would focus on free help for people. Now, at the time, I didn't have the name that I now have, which is helpbank.com, but I knew that I needed to build a scalable way of giving people knowledge. Now, what I didn't know back then that I know now, a quick bit of insight, is that app is overused as a word. It's actually not an app that you need to build at the beginning for most platforms. You need to build a web-based platform. Why? Well, if you build an app, you have to go in the App Store or in the Google Play Store. You get restricted by one of those two locations. So people that have a Samsung phone can't access the Apple Store to download your app. Why would you, when you launch something, restrict people from getting access to it? Plus, if it's web-based, people can just log in straight from a web browser, any web browser. That aside, I realized in my early days, I needed to do an app. And from that, I would do free help. And from that, I would be able to connect the network that I built in the podcast to the free help. So the people that I'd interviewed in the podcast, the knowledge that I was capturing in their case, I could connect now, that network being built via the podcast, to the help on the platform. This is how it's actually played out. The next thing I spent time thinking about was team. And on a mind map, I thought about who I actually need. Now, because I knew I was going to do a podcast, I knew that I needed an editor. But I also know my weaknesses, so I know I need an accountant, someone who's going to take care of the admin. These are things that I don't enjoy doing, so I know what to do. But I also realized with the network that I built through the podcast that I could have partners. So it's not just employees, but partners. I could link to the team. Again, working with the people that I'd spoken to on the podcast, I could connect them. The people that were going to work on the app, I could connect them. Although they're not necessarily on my payroll, they are people that perhaps are connected to my mission, want to help people, and they can become part of my extended team. Now, within the team structure, I can also start thinking about things like if I have an editor, maybe that editor hires editors. Or I hire editors, but you can start breaking down what you actually need within your team. Right now, as a mind map, you start, in my opinion, with what your hobbies are, what you enjoy doing. You're then building a business around it, and then you're thinking about different things that this business is going to need. Now, one of the things that I spent a lot of time thinking about that I haven't yet done but will be coming soon in my platform was what else I could do that would scale the business, give it what it needed resource-wise, without necessarily me being involved in it. And at that time, back 4 years ago, the word was merchandising. So I wrote down merchandising. Now, I think it's actually evolved now. It's beyond merchandising. But from that, I wrote down, of course, what everyone was doing 4 years ago. T-shirts and caps, that sort of stuff, right? Stuff that, maybe the word free humanity would look pretty cool on. And I thought about, in those days, things like sweets and products that perhaps we could launch. And I wrote down basically any way, merchandise-wise, we could make money. Now, what's interesting is I'm about to launch a sweet brand called Bizzies. It's taken 4 years to get to this part of the mind map, but it was on there. It was always on there. And ironically, when I was building team, if anyone said to me when I was interviewing them, they had some experience with sweet business, I made a note and kept them as someone maybe could help us in the future. Same with merchandising. Anytime I spoke to anybody that was perhaps looking at starting a t-shirt brand or working on building product, I'd see if perhaps they wanted to work with me in the future. Because once you know in your mind map one of the things that's going to come up in the future, you can look out as you're building other things for the very thing that's going to help make that happen. So this is a mind map. It is literally mapping out all the different things and different ways that your business can go. It's fun, it's simple, there's no template you can download and pay someone for, you don't need it. And the beautiful thing about a mind map is you're not fixed. You can start adding bubbles and adding things as things evolve, as people and the world change. You can start adding things and connecting the different dots between parts of your business. Something a 20-page document will never let you do because it's too linear. So that's a mind map. I hope it's a useful practical tool for you going forward. How to find purpose. Now, this word purpose might sound woo-woo. They don't teach you it at school, in my opinion, for a reason. Because if you understand purpose, you're very unlikely to work for someone else. Purpose is a very personal thing. You can find other people with purpose, you can find your tribe, you can be free. But finding purpose is not an easy thing, and it's not something you've been given any of the tools in which to make happen. So what is the first step in finding purpose? And it's a very obvious step that people do not do. You think about it. Now, the problem is, if you say you're thinking about purpose, people might laugh at you. Other people try to throw silly jokes out there like 49, and they'll throw you off. Or purpose will get so complicated in your head because you've not really thought about it before, you'll give up and go back to your old ways. You need to think about purpose. What is your purpose? We used to live in tribes of 5,000, and we used to work on a method called give without take. Not give and take. We used to help each other because it would make our tribe better, not because we'd make money from it. You ask me for help, I would give it to you for free. The world will be a better place. I'd get better at giving you that help for free. I'd become an expert at giving that help for free. Eventually, when I'm not in the room, people will talk about me and what I do because I've become so good at helping people. But I think today that doesn't fit the narrative of working at a call center and picking up the phone and doing what you're told in a factory that Henry Ford created. So when the school system was developed, the word purpose wasn't included in any of it. They asked the wrong question of you. What are you going to do when you grow up, is what schools say. That's not the right question. What you should be asked is, what problem are you going to solve? So the second step in thinking about and finding, hopefully, purpose is what problem matters to you. Now, at first, nothing might spring to mind. If something has jumped into your mind, then great. In a minute, I'm going to explain how you action that. But if it hasn't jumped into your mind, start thinking about what problems have actually affected you, big or small. Now, it can be really simple, like the banks aren't open early enough for you, or the swimming pool you wanted to go to doesn't let you swim the time you want. It might sound silly, but you start thinking about problems that bother you, and your brain wakes up. The entrepreneur muscle in your brain that helps you figure out how to solve that problem. Now, it might be that the bank's not opening on time isn't a problem you're going to solve, but if your brain starts thinking about that problem and how it can solve it, you might begin to understand how to find purpose. The third thing you can do is start breaking down how to make your life and that purpose match. Now, matching what you do in your day and your actual purpose is often easier than you think. I've met hundreds and hundreds of people who tell me what their dream is, and it turns out that their dream is often just 3% difference from their existing life. You know, between chimpanzees and humans, and only 3% difference in the DNA. And often, for example, I met someone that wants to do their own catering business. They're working in someone else's catering business. They're just missing this video in their life to figure out how to turn what they feel is their purpose, to make cakes for someone and make them smile and own that business, into that business. They're just missing knowledge. They're also not realizing that actually their purpose is nearly there. In fact, I would argue that the system sometimes wants you to feel like you're getting enough satisfaction that you don't need to make a change. So in other words, if you are working for someone else baking cakes, even if they're not using the ingredients you would use, or they don't care about the customer the same way that you do, at least you are baking. But you've got to break free from this thinking. You've got to realize that if you're going to do your purpose, you have to learn what I said earlier, take risk, but most importantly, to truly know yourself. I once interviewed a